Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 9:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Friday, August the 13th, and it's Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us, 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and I'm happy to be here. You know, I'm always glad to be able to do these shows. It's such a it's an awesome privilege, is what it is, really, to be able to do these shows and you know, talk about the issues surrounding child abuse and you know, just bring out this information, and I'm learning a lot from it. I know that, and I've done over 300 shows now, and looking back and counted them up, there's like 340 something shows there. Yeah, I had no idea when I first started out, you know, how many shows I'd be doing. So, you know, I'm actually quite surprised to see how many shows I've already done, and it's just amazing to see how many people have tuned into my shows. I just thank you so much for tuning in, and you know, it's just a real privilege to be able to do these shows on behalf of all these children out here tonight who will be abused and who will lose their lives to the hands of their parents or caregivers or child sexual predators, you know, people who just, you know, taking their lives, these poor children. And I'm just so happy to be able to do this show on their behalf, right? Yeah, we're going to continue talking about a PDF that I found that I think is some good information. It's from Child Welfare Information Gateway at childwelfare.gov/pubs, /user manuals /foundation/foundation.pdf. It's the Child Abuse and Neglect User Manual Series, a coordinated response to child abuse and neglect, the Foundation for Practice. And it was put out, I'll read out who it was put out by U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families, Administration on Children, Youth and Families, Children's Bureau, Office on Child Abuse and Neglect. And it's 114 pages long. We're on about page 46 or so. I don't know if we'll read the whole thing out. Like I've said before, I don't know. I don't think we'll need to read the whole thing out. But I just wanted to touch on some of the important stuff on it. It's all important, but some of the stuff that I found was really interesting. And just a different look at it, different way of, they presented it just a little bit differently, and the information, and it's quite good. And so, yeah, I hope you will take a look at this PDF and read through it. There's some good information on there, and tonight we're actually going to look at prevention. How can we prevent child abuse, right? So we're going to take a look at that. So you have to listen at your own discretion. You know, topics of abuse are very sensitive, and I think a lot of people, if you haven't heard a lot about abuse, you know, it can be kind of upsetting and scary for most people. You know, I lived my whole life. I grew up in an abusive environment, abused as a child, and also grew up with a lot of domestic violence and abuse, as well as in a violent neighborhood. And so a violent high school, a violent junior high, violence everywhere in my life. And so you know, abuse is just something that I've been dealing with my whole life, so it just comes naturally to me to talk about it. But I never broke the silence until last October. I had talked to people and had talked to friends and whatnot. I talk a lot about this on my morning shows, one child abuse survivor to another, in the morning, Monday through Friday, because that's, you know, I'm a survivor. So I talk a lot about these issues on that show. But, you know, I grew up around abuse, and so, you know, it's not uncomfortable for me to talk about it. It was much more uncomfortable for me while I was being abused than it is for me to talk about it right now. So I have no problems talking about it. But I didn't go public with my story until last October, and started writing a blog. It was called Not So Fond Memories, Growing Up in an Abusive Home. And Donna Shear, president of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, saw it, and she thought, she's a best-selling author, and they have their own publishing company, Shear and Potter Books. And she said, this needs to be a book. You know, it's such a great thing for survivors. You know, you should have that really available to people as a book, in a book format. So that's what we did, and I wanted all the proceeds to go to Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, because I did not want that money for the book, because the book means everything to me. It's my life story. It's the story of my brothers. It's my family story. And you know, it was paid for a long, long time ago, you know, with a lot of tears and heartbreak and sorrow and sadness and pain, right? So I didn't want the money for that book. I just couldn't take it, and I wanted that money to go to stop child abuse, right? So I hope you will pick up a copy, A Life of Death, The Redemption. That's my book. It's available at lulu.com. And it's called A Life of Death, The Redemption, and you can find it on my Blog Talk Radio show page, as well as other places. And yeah, just know that all the proceeds are going to stop child abuse. it's Dreamcatchers for Abused Children is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. That money stays, does not go into anybody's pocket. It is accounted for. We are under all kinds of regulations and scrutiny, and we have to account for all the funds coming in from donations, and it is all going to prevent and stop child abuse, right? So anybody who grabs a copy, just know that every single bit of profit from that book goes directly to Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and that makes me happy. That's what I wanted, and they honored me. They didn't want me to do that. They said, no, we don't think that's right, and I said, yes, that is right. That book should go to help stop child abuse, and that's exactly what I wanted to do, and to help survivors out there who have been there. And I know so many of us, just in the United States alone, the last stat was like 60 million. There's 60 million survivors of child abuse in the United States alone. So I know there's so many survivors out there, and I hope that book is just a helpful, one more story to say, you know what, you can do it. I can do it. You can do it. We can do it. So, that's the thing. I never went public with my story until last October. I had talked to people about it through the years, and talked to my friends and different people about the abuse, but never went public until last October, when I realized that I wanted to get involved in public speaking and to promote awareness and education and prevention of child abuse, right, nationwide, as well as in Canada, the United States, and maybe worldwide, if I can. And so I thought, well, I can't very well ask other people to break the silence if I'm not willing to break the silence. And I thought, yeah, that's so true. I need to break the silence. And it was killing me. It was literally killing me that I was stuck with all this stuff inside of me that needed to come out. And so that's why I wrote that book. And so this is what we're doing. We're trying to prevent this from happening to other children. This is so important. If they don't lose their lives at the hands of their parents and caregivers tonight, which is sadly there will be so many that will. There's an average of 5 children every night killed at their hands of their parents or caregivers, but there'll be more, probably more than that. It just won't be reported. And we're trying to stop this. If they don't die, they're gonna have to live a lifetime of survivor issues, trying to get over the abuse that they suffered. Whether it was, and it's all psychologically damaging. It's all emotionally damaging. It's whether they suffer from physical child abuse, sexual child abuse, neglect, you name it. It's all going to be extremely damaging, as well as the physical effects that are left over from the abuse, which most people, if they've survived any kind of physical abuse, child sexual abuse, will suffer physically as well as emotionally and mentally, right? And so I suffer from all of that. So, that's the whole issue. It's not something I would like. I want this stopped, and I want this stopped now. And I want programs put in place like now, so we can help these parents out here who are struggling and who are killing their children, and just because out of a sheer lack of coping mechanisms, and a sheer lack of knowledge, a sheer lack of empathy, a sheer lack of something. They're killing their kids, and if they don't kill them, they're killing them spiritually. They're killing them. These kids that are out there that are growing up abused and are going through the cracks, slipping through the system, and nobody's checking in on them, and they're being abused day after day. They are the walking dead, and that's what I was, and that's why my book is called A Life of Death: The Redemption. And it's because I'm alive now. You know what I mean? I've made it so far on my healing journey, right? So that's why this is so important to me, that we take a look at how we're going to prevent child abuse, how we're going to stop it, you know what I mean? And this is what I will do for the rest of my life. So I'm extremely happy that I'm finally on the road to doing something proactive about it, instead of sitting on the couch thinking I should self-injure or kill myself, right? So this is the thing. It's so much better to be on this end of it, and I would hope that people would realize that life is good, and that there is good things out there. There's good people out there. This life can be so good. But we have to seek it out. We have to search it out. And we have to stop this mess and prevent this from happening to other children, right? So that's why I'm doing this. And we're going to get right into this article. If you're a young person under the age of 18, I just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you, an adult or someone you trust, right? Because I think that it's important, because I'm fighting to save children's lives, and anyone under the age of 18 years old is a child, right? And so, you have to protect yourself, and if your parents aren't protecting you, then you have to get some protection, because there's so many crazy psychos out there, trying to get a hold of children. And I know this, we see this every day, child sexual predators and whatnot, getting a hold of children and assaulting them and ruining their lives, stealing their innocence, and basically ruining their lives forever. These people are out there. And the FBI has a great website. I like this website. The FBI has an awesome website for internet safety for parents and children. And all you have to do is type into your browser FBI internet safety, and it'll bring it up. And they state that like in a given night there's just tens and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of child sexual predators online searching out vulnerable children. And they will do anything. They'll use any means. They will lie. They'll say they're like 14 years old and that they love this certain kind of music and they have a skateboard, they love to ride their bicycles, and they love to go camping, and they like to hang around at the malls or whatever. They'll just say whatever they can to get these children to meet them somewhere, thinking that it's a 12 or 13-year-old friend, and it turns out to be a 30-year-old child sexual predator who assaults them, and these kids are never the same ever again. So you want to make sure you keep yourself safe, and that's why I ask people who are under the age of 18 to have someone listen to the show who's an adult or who's older and can help you make a decision whether you should be listening, and just to know what you're doing online and to help you to stay safe, right? It's so important because I didn't have parents who cared about me when I was growing up, and so you have to be really careful. If your parents don't care about you, you need to find somebody who does, like a coach, a mentor, someone in your life who cares about you and cares about your safety and your welfare, right? It's just so important. So, we'll get right on to with his PDF, and I'm just going to type a little message here for my friend. And so we're talking about prevention tonight, and I wanted to cover this. We left off on Wednesday night with this portion of the article, and it's about page 46 of this PDF, so I'm just going to scroll down there now. This is so very important to take a look at this. This is exactly what we need to do. We left off with what are the consequences of child abuse, right? And now we're going to be looking at how can we prevent child abuse, and so that's next. So this chapter is chapter 7, and it's titled What Can Be Done to Prevent Child Abuse and Neglect. And I'm just reading right from the PDF, and that's www.childwelfare.gov/pubs/user manuals/foundation/foundation.pdf. It says the seriousness of the effects of maltreatment presented in the previous chapter underscore the importance for professionals along with concerned community members to help prevent child maltreatment. To break the cycle of maltreatment, communities across the country must continue to develop and implement strategies that prevent abuse or neglect from happening. While experts agree that the causes of child abuse and neglect are complex, it is possible to develop prevention initiatives that address known risk factors. And this chapter provides an overview of prevention as a strategy, differentiates the various types of prevention activities, describes major prevention program models, and presents the roles of various sectors in prevention efforts. So prevention as a strategy. Prevention efforts most commonly occur before a problem develops so that the problem itself or some manifestation of the problem can be stopped or lessened. So this is what we do at Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. We're called primary prevention. And primary prevention is so important because primary prevention, there's primary prevention, secondary prevention, tertiary prevention. Primary prevention is the education, the awareness, getting the word out, stopping the abuse before it happens. That's what we want to do. We don't want to have to go in and pick up the pieces later and try to mend a broken child. And that's what secondary and tertiary prevention is doing. And, it's so necessary that they do it. It's so, thank God there are these programs in place and these organizations in place to help children who have been abused. But the whole issue is we need to stop this before it happens. We've got to stop child abuse, period. And, no child should have to suffer like this. No child. And, no kid deserves to be abused and kicked around and sexually abused. They're not sex toys. They're not punching bags. They're not just something you can just use and throw away. They're not just things that you just pop out and then throw in the trash. No, they're none of those things. Children are living human beings, and they have rights. They have the right to life. They have the right to a good life. They have the right to education, to safety, security, protection, nurturing, loving environment. They have the right to play. They have the right to learn and excel at anything that they do, anything that they want to do. They have the right to education. They have the right to government. They have the right to spirituality. They have the right to their own genealogy and to know where they've come from and their own past and history. They have the right to all of that, and more. So, just to think that we can kick children around and beat them up and burn them and stab them and kill them and beat them up every night because they're talking back, or this is absolutely ridiculous. It's not at all acceptable, and we have to get this education out there to people so that people will realize before they go and they beat the crap out of their child and kill them or stab them or cut their throats like what one woman did recently, that this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. There's no criminal as far as I'm concerned, there's no sentence that actually fits the crime of child abuse. You know what I mean? Because children, they're living beings. You can't put a price on a child. So, you know what I mean? Like people that murder their children because of abuse on purpose, intentionally murder their children and kill them because they just can't tolerate the baby crying, so they kill it. Can't tolerate the little child taking a cookie off the table, so they kill the child after 3 days of torturing them. This kind of stuff, this is absolutely unacceptable, and the courts need to start coming down extremely hard. The judge needs to start ruling on this stuff extremely hard. And, I don't care, there's no excuse for abuse. Abuse is a choice, just so everybody knows. Abuse is a choice. The abuser does have the option to not abuse. So, abusers, they're always in control. If they choose to abuse, that's what they're choosing to do. There's no excuse for abuse. There is none. I don't buy into it. I don't care what anybody says. If a person is mentally unstable enough that they abuse their children because they're mentally unstable, they should not be allowed to have those children. Children are not put here to kick around and beat up and mistreat and torture and verbally abuse and sexually abuse. They're none of that, right? So we have to get to them before this happens, and that's why primary prevention is tops, number one, and that's why I'm involved in primary prevention. As much as I'd love to go out and personally help abused children, to recover and to get better and get involved with abused children who have already been abused, it's way more important for me to be involved as a voice to say that this must stop, because I don't mind saying it. Night after night after night, as everybody can tell on my blog talk shows, right? I've got no problem speaking up 24 hours a day, as long as I can stay awake, to say that we must stop this. You know what I mean? So primary prevention really to me is the most important, and it also is to the pretty much to the whole community, of child protection and child protection services and whatnot. Primary prevention is the number one way to go, because they want to stop child abuse. We want to stop child abuse before it happens. So that's the whole issue. It's got to be done. We don't want to have to pick up the pieces later and try to help mend these children's lives back together after they're so screwed up. You know what I mean? We need to fix this situation before it happens. So that's very important for people to know what we're doing and why at Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it, because we want to stop it before it happens. And it's so important. You've got to get the education out there. It says child abuse and neglect prevention covers a broad spectrum of services such as public awareness, parent education, and home visitation, for audiences ranging from the general public to individuals who have abused or neglected a child. And community groups, social services, agencies, schools, and other concerned citizens may provide these services. Typically, prevention activities attempt to, I'm just going to go up to the top of the page here, to deter predictable problems, protect existing states of health, and promote desired life objectives. And more specifically, family support services, a major component of child abuse prevention, are designed to strengthen and stabilize families, increase parental abilities, provide a safe and stable family environment, and enhance child development. So to prevent child abuse and neglect, programs may focus on one or several risk factors discussed in Chapter 5, which is what are the factors that contribute to child abuse and neglect, right? For example, we already went through that. For example, prevention programs may include substance abuse treatment programs for women and children, or women with children, respite care programs for families with children who have disabilities, and parent education programs and support groups for families affected by domestic violence. And see, this is where, like our parents, I talk a lot about the whole intervention that was done in my family by CPS or DHS, whichever one it was. And it's, the whole issue that they got involved. I was just a toddler, and my brother had gone to school in a in a turtleneck in the middle of the summer, and it, you just don't wear a turtleneck in the summer down in the desert there. And teachers noticed that, and they noticed a bruise on his face or some marks on his face or something. They actually talked to him and took him to the nurse. And my brother, showed them the bruises and whatnot, and he had been beaten up by my dad, and so the authorities got involved, and so there was an intervention done. So the courts, took my parents to court. My parents had to agree that they would go to counseling, or we would be removed from the home, right? So they agreed. They went twice. I mean, how pathetic is that? This is a fact. This is a known fact. My parents went twice. How much counseling how much good advice can you get from somebody from going twice to a counseling session, especially with my parents who had been married for, 40-odd years and had been abusing each other the whole time and their children. So 2 sessions just don't cut it. So someone failed the family, and I know that, and I can't, it's not, and I know at the time, they probably bought into the whole thing that my parents were, oh yes, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and my parents were very good at manipulating people, and they just were able to get away with it, and that's just really unfortunate. So that's just a thing. Even when interventions are done, quite often, it's not enough. It just doesn't. You know what I mean? Kids slip through the cracks. They sure do. You know what I mean? And so this is what we have to make sure that people do follow through with this stuff, follow up with it. And, we need a better system. And, hey, I appreciate all the hard work that all these people have been doing out here. I spend a lot of time not necessarily running the system down. But the thing is I'm just saying that we need to look at what's working and go with it, and look at what's not working and not go with it. But it's such a huge epidemic. This is the whole issue. Child abuse is an epidemic. It's like a disease, and it's everywhere. It's rampant, right? So that's why there's so many people having such a hard time trying to stop child abuse, right? And all these people that work, with CPS, DHS, and all these other different child protection service agencies, right? They're working hard. They are really trying to stop child abuse, trying to help people out. But the whole issue is there's too many. There are too many abused children. And so they just cannot keep up with their caseloads. You know what I mean? And so this is what's really extremely sad to me, is that, they just can't keep up with what they've got. So, we spend 104, there, I have my good friend in the chat room now, from Australia. Hello, my dear. And, these $104 billion is spent annually in the United States alone. $104 billion. That's the latest stats that I could find. $104 billion annually spent every year to stop, not to stop child abuse, because of child abuse. Because of child abuse, the United States spends $104 billion a year. Now, what I think we should do is take the $104 billion and add about another 200 to 400 billion more. Make it about 500 billion and stop child abuse. Put all the programs in place and get all the people signed up that want to be involved to help these families out and pay them to do it. You know what I mean? A good wage, right? And a living wage. And, and help these people who are having these problems, who are killing their children, and if they don't kill them, who are beating and maiming and torturing their children and verbally abusing and psychologically abusing and sexually abusing their children, and get a hold of these people and stop them. You know what I mean? And then all the new people, anybody having children, to me it just seems, and I'm sorry, but I have to say this, because I was abused as a child, and it makes me so angry what these children are going through right now tonight, and there's no excuse for it. And so we can't sit back and say, well, it's not like a communist country or some country where, nobody has rights. It's like, well, you know what? No one has a right to abuse a child either, but they do it anyway. And then they get away with it. And that makes me really mad. You know what I mean? So the whole issue is young people having children, they should be forced to actually both the couple, I don't care whether it's a same-sex couple, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, whoever the partner is involved in who's going to be rearing this child and actually helping to bring up and raise this child, they should have to have mandatory parenting classes, and then there should be the first 2 to 3 years of that child's life, there should be someone who steps in to visit the family on a regular basis to make sure that they're not abusing their children. And that, because then if there's domestic violence, they can stop that and nip it in the bud. Of course it would make people have to straighten up, and of course nobody wants to do that. They want to be able to pummel each other, throw things at each other, curse at each other, beat each other up, right? I mean, I'm sure my parents would have been really unhappy if they couldn't abuse each other on a daily basis. It would have just ruined their whole day, right? Because my parents loved to fight, and they absolutely loved doing what they did to their children. They loved being top dog, kicking their children around. It was good for them. That's how ignorant they were. But they grew up like that. They didn't know any better. So we need to change this thing for children. You know what I mean? Like we have an obligation. We honestly, we cannot sit back and just say, oh, those parents have rights too. It's like, well, they don't have the right to kill their children. They don't. It's against the law. They don't have the right to abuse their children. And anything that harms a child is abuse. If it's intentional and it harms the child, it's abuse. So I'm talking, you leave a welt on a child and it's intentional and you hurt a child, it's abuse. It's not discipline. So we got to start thinking about this in terms of 2010. You know what I mean? This is not 1845 when it was okay to just beat children and do whatever you wanted to them and kill them, and who cares? Take them out and bury them. This is 2010 and we have rights, and I'm standing up for those rights. And those kids have rights, and I'm standing up for their rights too. And it's absolutely ridiculous that more people don't get involved in this. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of us that are, and my good friend in the chat room right now, she's an advocate as well, out there doing everything she can to stop child abuse. And, I mean, I thank every single person who is doing something to help stop child abuse. This is ridiculous what's going on. And we all have to get upset about it. But not upset and then just walk off and say, oh, well, that upsets me, but now I'm off to the pub to have a drink, or that upsets me, but now I got to go shopping. No, it's like, that upsets me. How am I going to get involved in my own community to make a difference? How am I going to get involved within my own family and make a difference? If you know of a child who's being abused, you have to do the right thing and make a phone call. If you suspect, because otherwise, you can be brought up on charges for not making a phone call. If you suspect child abuse, you make the phone call. Because CPS and DHS, they on all these child protection services, they don't remove children unless they absolutely have to. And half the time they don't remove them, and they should, right? And I'm a living proof of that. So the thing is, you don't have to worry about the kids being removed from the home. And I know there's some people out there that are complaining, saying, well, they took my children and they shouldn't have. There had to be something wrong. They do not just take kids away for no reason. Honest to God. There's nowhere to put them. Where are they going to put them? You know what I mean? So get that child some help. And the best thing we can do is look out for the kids in our own family. If people would stop abusing their children, I wouldn't have to be on this show griping and complaining all the time and making a big bunch of noise. You know what I mean? I could just be off doing something else. I think people just need to stop abusing their children. That's what I think. And, it's like, what is the matter with people that they think it's okay to beat on their children, to call their children names, to make their children feel lesser than all the time, and just to hurt their feelings and to kick them around and punch them and knock their teeth out and break their faces and break their little bones and kill them. And, this is sexually use them as if they're some sort of a sex toy or sex object. What is going on? People need to get a grip. What's the matter with these people? And the thing, what really makes me mad is that it's just such a joke in the courts. It's like, 5 years, $10,000 fine for killing your child. Like, what? You got to be kidding me. It should be life in prison, if not the death penalty. You know what I mean? With no chance of parole. We're talking no parole, no bond, no nothing. Straight to jail for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? And that's where I am at tonight. It's very frustrating, and I think that something has to be done. So we'll just keep on continuing on. We're just going to keep on talking about this, and we're going to just keep on looking at ways to talk. We're going to finish up this prevention article next week, maybe move on to something else. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Monday night, don't forget to join. I have a guest coming on, and this lady, you don't want to miss this. Ray Luskin is going to be on my show Monday night, August 16th at 7 o'clock p.m. And she's going to be talking about healing and wholeness for survivors. Healing and wholeness for adult survivors of child abuse. And she's got some great information. I know it's going to be very helpful for me. So be sure and tune into that. And, and I'll be back on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio again. And you can check my schedule here on Blog Talk Radio just to see what shows are coming up. But thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And your support is just awesome. Have a great night. If you need anything, get a hold of me on Blog Talk Radio. Contact me on Facebook and wherever if you have some comments or questions, or if you need any resources or information that I know of that I can help you with, please do get a hold of us. Check out Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. Make sure you check out their website. It's updated like hourly. I'm talking when there's news coming in, it goes on the website. Please check it out. It's the most current website I know of to date. Have a great night, everybody, and take care of yourselves. And if you need something, get a hold of me. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Be safe in everything that you do. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.